to welcome him. We're very happy to have him today. He has made over 350 podcasts about colleges, majors, undergrad students, research, admissions, experiences of alumni, and great stories for and about college counselors. So welcome, Venkat, and can you tell us more specifically about why and how you got involved in starting these college podcasts?
Sure. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks for having me. Thanks to MACAC for this opportunity. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about how I got into this. Funnily enough, it all started at the beginning of COVID. I was always very interested in stories and storytelling, and my kind of feeling on this is that everybody loves stories. And I also love the higher education area. And especially when I put my kids through college and I was going through that process, it really intrigued me. And COVID acted as a forcing function where I got to talk to people about their experiences and about college education, about how they got to college, what they did there, faculty, et cetera, et cetera. And I had no agenda. I wasn't really trying to do anything specific other than to talk to people and sort of share their stories. And the whole thing has kind of grown organically. And at this point, like Sheila mentioned, we've done a host of stories. And the name of the podcast is College Matters, Alma Matters. And we probably have close to 100 colleges that we've done stories with. And the beautiful thing about this is that there are lots of people who have listened to it, even maybe for a few minutes, and but it has reached about about 100 countries, and so it's a very satisfying work. What I found about this was that people were very generous with their time, with their stories. They shared some really deep insights into their college education or about their experiences. And I find that this has now grown to where I now have college counselors from a variety of schools who participated in the process and who are using this as a resource. So I think with all that, and it's now been 4 years, very happy to see where it is, and certainly didn't think we'd be here today talking about the podcast with a group of you. So Sheila shared a bunch of questions with me. And so what I'm going to do is to try and respond to those in the order that you see on the screen. So what I thought is, before I jump into how counselors use the specific podcast, tell you a little bit about the podcast themselves. But even before that, I just thought it would be interesting to have a show of hands or a poll that how many of you listen to podcasts? Is it sort of a thing that you pursue, just to get a feel for where things are at with podcast listening? Okay, I don't get a sense of how many, but it looks like there are quite a few. So let's move on.
Sorry, Venkat, it just took me a second. It should be going right now.
Okay, sorry.
It looks like the majority of people so far do listen to podcasts.
Awesome. Yeah, it's just to get a feel. So good. So let's talk about what's in this podcast. So as I mentioned earlier, it has primarily college stories, and I've kind of broken it up into a variety of categories. College experiences with alumni and college students is certainly a big thing. I have lots of conversations with counselors about their advice, about how they guide students, what they're looking for, and what is success to them, their philosophies. Admissions officers from colleges who share what they are looking for in the students. Another huge topic that I started a couple of years ago is undergraduate research. it's really a life-changing experience, if one can call it that, as they go through the college process. It's a great way to augment what you study in the classroom. And I've done a bunch of stories with undergraduate researchers, faculty mentors. Um, Another one that I've shone a lot of light on is honors college. It's one of those things that I don't think gets adequate attention or enough attention. And a bunch of stories with deans and directors and alumni of honors colleges and programs. And something that I've done sort of occasionally is focused on college majors as well, where I have talked to a practicing professor for certain discipline, whether it's biochemistry or physics, or different parts of engineering, as a way to really bring what a major is about for high schoolers. And then obviously the high school folks themselves, the seniors, folks who are just college bound, to every year do sort of a few of those stories to see where their heads at and what kind of things they're thinking. So these are broadly the topics that I have been covering, and a lot of it is organic. I really didn't plan out one or the other, but it's really folks recommending, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And that's sort of kind of how it's grown. And my entire objective is to inform in a very personalized way and hopefully inspire the students who listen to this. So what I thought I would do is very quickly give you a little lay of the land to show you where the podcasts are, and then we'll come back to the rest of the presentation. So one of the things I wanted to share is on my website, the almamatters.io, there's a podcast, and under podcasts, I have organized the podcasts, and this is not totally current, but I've kind of put down what I just said. So for example, you can sort by college experiences. So you can just look at the stories that talk about college experiences, or if you want to look at undergraduate research, you could look at those. So there are different ways of looking at this information. And just going back to college experiences, for example, so let's say I have a little preview that tells you what the podcast is about. And then I have the actual podcast that you can listen to right there. And then I have a transcript typically of the podcast, of the episode. And then one of the things I've done with all the podcasts is to do what I call the high fives. These are sort of 5 snippets from the podcast that hopefully highlight some different aspects or the interesting aspects of the podcast. And so that's a quick way. It's at the top of the podcast. It's about a few minutes, maybe 3 to 4 minutes max. And you'd get a very good feel for whether this is a podcast that's of interest to you, if it sort of communicates what you want to hear or what you want to listen to, and then go forward with it. Now, let me just take you to the actual Spotify site, and this is going to show you from. It's taking a few seconds here. Yeah, so this is on Spotify, but we are on Apple Podcasts. Google's podcast is going away, but we are on Amazon. We're on a variety of all the popular platforms. And if you look at the latest one was on rethinking the test optional stuff and about Dartmouth making a decision to reverse course. And so we have these show notes. And the show notes sort of carry a lot of information. And so I'm going to go to this one, which is a college experience one, Adriana Cuevas. And this is about, she's a Goldwater scholar. And so I have at the top of the show notes, a little blurb, and then the topics that we discuss. And if you look at the topics, there's the high fives that I mentioned, an overall experience, why she chose Skidmore, the high school interests, and then the actual experience in college, why she sort of applied for the Goldwater scholarship, and why she won. Why do you think why she might have won? And then typically I close each one of these with some advice for high schoolers. So it is a pretty exhaustive and comprehensive discussion of what actually the students' experiences are. And this is sort of similar, this is sort of the case with all the different podcasts that I do. One other thing I would just like to highlight is that there is also a category of what I call class. And these are podcasts that we've done, which are intended to be like a, like a workbook or a class where you take a particular topic. And so we've done on college applications, we've done on UC applications, and these are very interesting and more step-by-step discussion of some of the topics. So there's quite a range of things here, and I just thought I'd quickly just show you what we have and what I've been doing. Now, let me come back to the presentation itself and continue from where I left off. So just to recap the listening tips. So the reason this is important is the podcasts are, can be 40, 45 minutes long. It's one thing is you can take a quick read of the preview. Is this something that you want to listen to? Then the high fives that I mentioned at the top of the episode, a quick way to kind of check if that is going to be something that appeals to you. Then you listen to the entire episode. There are lots of specific topics that I have put on my platform and on the site. And if you listen to it, please do rate the podcast. That always helps get feedback. Now, let me quickly give you a flavor for the type of stuff that we have in our podcast, some content flavor. So the first thing I'm going to do is just give you some snippets, which you obviously can listen to. So this is from college experience. So one question I always ask students is why they chose Vanderbilt or why they went to UC Berkeley. And these are just some quick sound bites. And I talked to them about the transition to college. What is it like going from high school to college? What kind of challenges or what did it take to get used to it? How did you adapt? How did you go from there? Then high school interest is another one, a range of things. And this is really, really very illuminating and very helpful, I believe, to both the counselors as well as the students today. And then I kind of always get the overall experience, overall college experience, wherever they've gone to school. And so all these are good components that a good piece of information and insights that counselors can find and sort of share with their students. Now, I'm going to do another little quick question here. And so one of the questions I asked the alumni is if they could go back and redo their 4 years of college, what would they do, or what is it that they wish they had done? And so there are 5. It's a multiple choice question. There's only one correct answer here, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to just play a game and say, I wish I'd done, and I have these 5 different items. Which one do you think students thought they would have really liked to have done more of? And I'm not going to wait, but I'm just going to say the surprising thing was that they wish they had taken more courses and classes. And this is sort of a very interesting theme. As people leave college, they feel like they could have done more. They could have tried out some other things, some other disciplines, other topics. And if you look at the top 3 things that they wish they had done, in addition to the courses one, is not thinking about GPA all the time, and also probably being more active on campus. And so, again, this is a good thing for students who are about to go to college to kind of be aware of, that opportunities that you get, you don't get it often, you may never get it again. And these are the things that you could do on campus as well as in terms of the classes. So I'm now going to sort of transition to using the podcast. So some examples of how counselors and students might be able to use it. And what I find is that counselors, first of all, like the storytelling approach. There are a range of stories. There are lots of snippets and nuggets that they can share with their students. Um, there's a lot of curated content that gets produced. Peer counselors podcasts have enormous amount of information and insights. Same thing with the admissions officers. I distill them, I try to simplify them. I do a newsletter that I'll talk about in a second. There are the high fives, which sort of give you sort of some of the nuggets, and then takeaways that either get part of the newsletter or some other ways. And then I think it saves time because a lot of counselors are now sharing I send them a monthly podcast update list with sort of a little blurb about each of the podcasts, and they share it with their parents and the students as part of their monthly newsletters that school counselors provide. And then there are tools that I've started working on based on these stories. Some of them do in-class discussions. In fact, one of the counselors, Tom Stepkowski of West Hill High School, in Connecticut, he actually ran a workshop based on the stories and had a in-class discussion about each of the stories with about a dozen students. And those were tremendously illuminating. It's sort of like a book club, except that this is about podcasts where people share what they got out of the stories and exchange ideas. And then workbooks, which I'll talk about in a bit. So these are some of the ways that I find counselors are using the podcast. And from time to time, they send me things which kind of makes my day. For example, Tom Stepkowski got something from a student who listened to a podcast about a Northwestern student, and she said she learned things that she never even knew she ought to think about. This is a senior who's applying to college. And another one shared the podcast with the parents of a student, and then and Colleen from Dowling Catholic, she is going to use it in her junior class presentations about college. So these are all different ways, just some snippets of how people are using it and students are benefiting from it. And just all to say that it is this cycle that makes it very, very exciting and productive for me. Now, these are just some quick of kind of folks that have been helping me and supporting me over the last few years in terms of not only coming on the podcast, but also sharing this with their students, with connecting me, and then insights, and then topics. For example, Sean Kennedy, who also is the president of MACAC now, he came and talked about the Supreme Court decision about affirmative action. And so we sort of did a piece last summer on that, a podcast last summer. And so Paula Dennis talked about test optional and how to deal with test scores, for example. So there's a lot of these folks have come in and helped sort of shed some light on topics that might be very confusing or things that might be confusing for students or the challenges that students might be sort of facing. Okay, so all that we've kind of talked about what's in the podcast, how counselors are using it. The next question that I'm going to take on is when the students are using the podcast, how should they listen for the different, when they're listening to experiences or about majors, and also about undergraduate research. So I'm going to take on 4 and 5. And the listening tips I have are very simple. So when you're listening to college experiences, I recommend that students have keep like a journal or a little notebook which says the things that you liked from the story, things that you didn't like. Did it raise any questions for you? Are there things that you'd like answers for? And then whatever the college or university, can you see yourself there? So it starts to build up a feel for what kind of college you want to be in. And sophomores and juniors can really benefit from this. On the major side, a lot of students go into college obviously without being undecided, and for a variety of reasons. But one of the things I thought would be valuable is by bringing these podcasts to them, They sort of get the scope of what a particular major can accomplish, what kinds of things it does, some history of that. And then more importantly, what kind of skills do you need to pursue that discipline, and what kind of opportunities exist once you graduate? And I think the last bullet here is really important. How do you check it out? Can you shadow somebody, or can you do some exploration, some experimenting, and get a feel for whether a particular major is for you or not? And all these are pretty valuable, trying to do that at some levels of high school rather than go to college and then be faced with a vast array of majors. I think the exploration is good, and colleges that allow you to do that is great. But having a short list is not a bad idea. The second part of what I wanted to say is the undergraduate research. I mean, I think this is one of the big opportunities that a lot of students miss once they get to college. Roughly 20-25% at best of the students take advantage of the undergraduate research. But my own take is based on the stories that I've done, is that for folks who don't know what don't still know what they want to do in terms of a major, it's a great way to explore majors by doing research in different areas. And almost everybody that has done research feels that it really augments their in-class learning. And don't wait for the senior years, start early, maybe after your first 2 semesters or terms. And then I think just from an impact point of view, it changes your career trajectory tremendously. I think students who do undergraduate research do find themselves in a better spot. I've just called out a few episodes that might be aware. I mean, I can put this in a follow-up, printout or a email. There are Goldwater scholars like Aaron Sandoval from University of Florida who did some regenerative research. The honors college students do a lot of research as part of typically their programs. So Ian Cleary of Oakland University, he played baseball and he did research as well, so at the varsity level. And then faculty mentors like Alexa Sand, the art history professor, and it's absolutely inspiring story. And then Justice Robinson, she dropped out after high school, didn't go to college for 7 years, and then she went back to college. And her experience is just awesome. And I think research was probably one of the big things that helped her as she did that. So just a quick shout out to some of these episodes. And then if there's only one thing you want to check out, and you can, there is one podcast I did recently called Undergraduate Students, Why They Do Research and More. This is really just a collage of stories. It's under 20 minutes, 18 minutes, but it tells you a bunch of little things on some 4 or 5 students, why they got into research or how they got into research, and then what it means for them. And so different stories. So there are like 7, 8 stories there. So anyway, hopefully this sort of gives you a feel for one particular topic. That similarly, honors colleges, etc., have also some wonderful stories. Okay, so that's much about the podcast, the different content, what people do with it, how students benefit. The next one, Sheila wanted to know, rumor has it that I was developing a workbook. Can we talk more about it? And it is true, and it's no longer a rumor, I guess. I'm putting out a summer workbook set. There are 2 parts to it. One is to build the college list, and these are entirely using podcast stories. And the other one is to help put the best self on your college application. So these are based on the podcast we've done, on the stories, and we made it a step-by-step guide. And these are for students. And then there's a counselor version with notes. So these are counselor guided workbooks. And I've provided you an opportunity to sort of pre-order. The pre-order is just to get a sneak preview version in April. and then you can decide if that is something that you want to go ahead with. And so again, this will be available to you. I have a QR code as well, so whichever is the easier way, and I have a simple form with a couple of questions, and we'll send you the version that once it's ready in April. So that's on the workbook. The last thing before I forget is the newsletter. I mentioned that a few times in the last few minutes. So this is something that's on Substack. It's a weekly newsletter. I do a monthly version called Counselor Edition. There are counselors counselors from over 50, 60 schools, in addition to lots of students and faculty that are on this subscriber list. It gets a great read. I pick topics based on the podcast, and this is something that from a time point of view, it's a quick read. As I said, it's like a few minutes, but hopefully it gives you what you need. And I'd really like to sort of ask each one of you to sign up. It's free, and it would be great to get your feedback. Okay, so we're reaching the end of at least my prepared stuff. Love to stay connected. As I mentioned, the newsletter is one. Do subscribe to it. Support the summer workbook. I think it's pretty novel and different, and I think it's of great value for the students. It should help you as a counselor, and of course help students as well to think through and put together their college lists and think about their application. And lastly, if you would love to be on this podcast or like to be on the podcast, send me an email and we can see how to make that happen. So with that, I'm going to say I'm ready for any questions, whatever you guys think.
So it looks like Jacob Fry has his hand up. If he wants to pop in, let me unmute you, Jacob. Oh, I think I lost him. Okay. All right, go ahead, Jacob, if you had a question.
Well, I actually got my question already answered. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Sheila, you're muted.
If people want to put questions in the Q&A, they can do that, or they can, I think if we can still see hands go up, we can try it that way too.
Yeah. Venkat, I had a question, which is that students come in to meet with me all the time, and they'll say, I saw on TikTok, or I saw on College Confidential, or I saw on Reddit. So what is your advice to students? Obviously your format is very different because it's a longer form, it's a podcast, right?
Yeah.
But what kind of advice do you have for teenagers now in terms of like sifting through that information and finding the good stuff, like your content, versus all the other noise that they get from the internet?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the attention span is the challenge. And so I think that at the minimum, if researching colleges or researching your future is it's not a very quick business, right? I mean, it's something that requires some level of attention and time. And so my suggestion would be that two things. One is to use, in the case of my podcast, to use maybe the high fives and the previews as a way to filter, which should take a few minutes, but then take the time to listen to the podcast. Now, the podcast is also divided into different sections, so they could, if they were to listen to 4 or 5, I would say, listen to the overall experience, listen to what they did in high school, listen to why they picked a college, the transition to college, and then something about their college experience is always interesting. I mean, either it is their campus activities or their classroom discussions or research or study abroad. Pick your favorite experiential program, and then the advice they give is usually very interesting. Obviously, it's shaped by their own experiences, but I think it highlights sort of don't stress out is something they'll all say, but that's easy to say, I guess. And so, but other than that, there's a lot of good stuff about how to navigate, how to pick topics or majors or subjects. And I think this fixation on GPA, I mean, people do get too caught up that they don't explore. And so yeah, so my suggestion would be to kind of pick some sections and listen, and that might be, something they can do within 10, 15 minutes.
Good. We put our, I think it was really interesting to hear about somebody using it for the newsletters for the parents and putting different parts in there. We actually put the whole, like an icon on our website for all the podcasts and the newsletters, and they can access everything just from our counseling website. And I think it's been kind of fun for the kids and the parents to start exploring that. So it takes time, but it's kind of cool. I don't see any other questions in here, but I don't know if you can see hands up, Hannah. I can't tell.
No, I don't see any hands up for more questions right now.
Okay. Well, then I wanted to mention to everybody please don't forget to register for the MACAC conference. It closes on Friday. The registration closes on Friday, so they'd like you to hurry up and get registered for that. It sounds exciting this year, and it sounds like it's going to be pretty full, which is really nice. And Venkat's PowerPoint and the recording of this webinar will be on the MACAC website under the webinars for professional development. So
awesome.
That's something I wanted to mention. And anything else? Can we put in the chat or maybe we can show it on the QR code for people to sign up?
Yeah,
captured it.
I can. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, even the email is good. Yeah.
Yeah, I can email, but let me.
Oh, we just have another question, Venkat, from.
Okay, sure.
Asking, any work done with community college? What would your advice be to students to attend a 4-year versus a 2-year?
Oh, that's a good one. I've done a bunch of stories with community colleges, both in terms of students and some undergraduate research folks. James Hewlett being one of them, and I did also a piece on how to think strategically about community college and then going to a 4-year program. I have stories now. My personal feeling is that it is obviously a great way to, from a cost point of view and from a quality point of view, it's a great approach. I think the challenge in a lot of cases is getting to a 4-year program. Not everybody. If the idea is to get to the 4-year program from there, then, for example, in California, it's very competitive. I mean, so to get from the two. For the 2-year program to 4-year. But some other places, they have a tie-up with the 4-year colleges, and they do find a way to do it. So, but having said that, I think there are so many community colleges with great programs and great foundation that it puts them in a much better spot, both financially and academically, to do that. So, I would say check out the stories. I think it depends on the college you go to, but I think it's a great option. It's also an under considered option. Also, I find.
Thank you, Venkat. That's awesome. I can't see any more questions. If there's no more questions, we can end.
Yeah, here's the QR code you were asking for. It will be on the.
Perfect. Yeah, and we've used it. It's been quite exciting for the parents and the students here. They've really enjoyed using it. So hopefully some other people will be able to do the same in whichever way they want. So they also have your email, I think. If they have any questions, is it okay for people to email you directly?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and do we need to put that one back up in the chat for anybody? No, yeah, you have it in there. Great, thank you. Hannah, is there anything else that we're forgetting that you wanted to ask?
I don't think so. I'll just mention we have another webinar in this spring MACAC series coming up on March 5th with Patrick O'Connor. So look out for that one if you haven't registered yet. join us. And then there's another one introducing everyone to MACAC. So we've got more events coming. Just kind of follow on email and social media.
Great, thank you. Venkat, anything else that you can think of?
No, I think, just check out the podcast, subscribe to the newsletter, and, check out the workbook.
All right. We really appreciate you coming here. I know it's a lot earlier in California, so we really appreciate your time and effort.
My pleasure.
All right.
This was fun. Thank you.
Everybody.
Great. We hope to see you
Yeah.
again sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.
Thank you again so much.
Okay,
Yep.
take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.